The HOA said my pool was destroying the visual balance of the desert, so I built it bigger and added a float shaped like their logo. They wanted compliance. I gave them chlorine-scented rebellion. A minute I was sipping coffee, watching a peaceful hole get dug for my future pool. The next, some stranger in designer sneakers was on my property, filming me like I was the final boss in a Home Depot crime saga. She shouted, "You're destroying community values," like I'd just bulldozed a national monument. Then she called the cops, because in her personal rulebook apparently whole plus happiness equals felony. I didn't know what was funnier, her outrage or the fact that she clearly had no idea who she was dealing with. Ever had an HOA warrior charge into your life uninvited? Tell me what state you're watching from. Misplaced authority loves to travel. Now look, I wasn't trying to start a holy war with my backyard hole. I just wanted a place to cool off, relax, and maybe host a few barbecues where nobody argued over mailbox colors. But apparently in Dry Marigold Basin, if your water isn't in a bottle sold at Whole Foods, it's considered a biohazard. I had permits, plans, and peace until Priscilla Thorne Mathers arrived, riding in on a white SUV that looked like it paid HOA dues just to exist. She parked like she owned the horizon, stepped out like a Supreme Court judge, and waved her iPhone like it was a wand of suburban justice. "Excuse me, you are in violation of Section 9, subparagraph G," she barked, already recording. I said, "Ma'am, I'm building a pool, not launching a rocket." But she was too busy framing my pool as a Category 5 visual offense. She pointed at my excavator like it had committed a hate crime. "This is an affront to neighborhood unity." I reminded her we were in the middle of 22,000 acres. The only neighbor was a jackrabbit who didn't file complaints. That didn't matter. She declared herself president of the Greater Marigold Valley Improvement Authority, a title so fake it should have come with glitter and a sash. She marched around the edge of the dig site like she was inspecting a crime scene. "You're degrading the spirit of the community," she yelled, stepping directly behind the excavator mid-swing. And then, splash. One heaping bucket of topsoil and mud dumped right onto her dry clean-only activism. She went from HOA hero to chocolate statue in 2 seconds flat. "You did that on purpose!" she shrieked, wiping her designer lenses like they'd been personally insulted. "Ma'am," I said, "nobody told you to walk behind a machine with a warning label bigger than your purse." Even my backhoe operator was snorting into his sleeve, trying not to choke on laughter. Priscilla stomped back to her SUV looking like a latte in a thunderstorm. "This is not over! I'm calling the authorities!" she screamed over her shoulder, dragging a trail of mud like she was sponsored by Swamp. That's when I smiled, because what she didn't know, as she furiously dialed 911 from her luxury command center, was exactly who would be answering that call. You can't win a moral argument with someone who thinks pool water is a felony. She called the cops, but didn't realize the badge was already on the property. Come back for the next part to see what happens when HOA fantasy meets law enforcement reality. And comment below, what's the pettiest HOA complaint you've ever seen? I need inspiration for the next pool float. The 911 call went out with all the urgency of a hostage crisis. According to dispatch, I was now a hostile individual engaged in unauthorized construction with possible environmental disregard. Translation, I was digging a pool too confidently for Priscilla's peace of mind. She framed it like I was using a backhoe to tunnel under NORAD. Deputy Skylar Boone showed up 10 minutes later, wearing his most official law enforcement face and trying real hard not to burst out laughing. Skylar's been working under me for 4 years. I'm the sheriff, remember, but today he was method acting. "Afternoon, sir," he said with a straight face. "Are you the individual responsible for this hole?" I nodded solemnly, as if I might confess to installing an unlicensed jacuzzi cartel. And then she emerged. Priscilla like a cult leader returning from wardrobe. New blouse, same ego. Camera gear upgraded to something that looked like it came with a boom mic and delusions of a Netflix deal. "This man is a threat to our shared visual ecosystem," she declared, planting her heels like she was about to lead troops into battle. She started narrating her own courtroom drama while backing up for a wide shot. And that's when karma took a cow-sized dump on her ambition. She sank into a fresh pile of cow pies like she was entering a spa treatment for her ankles. Her scream was immediate, high-pitched, and so theatrical I half expected an orchestra to rise out of the field. "You need to arrest him immediately!" she shrieked, looking like a yogurt commercial gone wrong. Skylar blinked, took a long breath, and responded with all the patience of a man rethinking his career. "Ma'am, I need to see some identification, and maybe some boots." I handed Skylar my paperwork, the full packet of permits, county approvals, and property maps signed in triplicate. He flipped through them while Priscilla tried to scrape dignity off her Prada loafers. "Everything looks legal," Skylar said, then raised an eyebrow. "Including the sarcasm?" I shrugged. "That one's inherited." Priscilla wasn't done. "This is a conspiracy against property values," she howled, holding up her mud-covered iPad like it was a court order. "Sir, are you even certified to supervise this type of construction?" Skylar paused. "Ma'am, he's certified to supervise this entire county." Silence. I could hear a grasshopper judging her from a distance. "You can't win with a rulebook you printed during brunch. The petition's next move? A petition. And a one-woman PR war. But Dry Marigold's got its own Yelp system and Miss Eunice's clipboard doesn't miss. Stick around and watch the HOA's revolution get real awkward real fast. Like, comment, and tell me, what's the pettiest power move your neighbor ever tried to pull? Priscilla launched her petition campaign with the enthusiasm of a motivational speaker trapped inside a TED Talk no one asked for. She started knocking on doors like she was running for sheriff, pope, and HOA dictator all at once. Her pitch was louder than her perfume, and residents signed her petition just to end the conversation before she broke into verse 2 of her Protect Our Views monologue. Armed with a clipboard and judgment, she marched through Dry Marigold like it was the Alamo and she was defending it from chlorinated evil. But then she reached Miss Eunice McCready's house, a woman so legendary her casseroles are in the local museum. Eunice stood on her porch, arms crossed, chewing sunflower seeds with the judgmental rhythm of a ticking clock. Priscilla gave her whole speech. Cows paused their grazing to hear the drama. Eunice didn't blink. She spat a sunflower seed at Priscilla's boots and said, "Sweetheart, Clyde's granddad built this valley with a shovel and 2 teeth. You ain't above him." That's the moment Priscilla's left eye twitched, like it had heard the truth and rejected it on moral grounds. "This is a matter of law and order," she hissed. Eunice tilted her head and fired back. "Then you better get a badge, sugar, and a clue." But Priscilla wasn't giving up. Oh no. She shifted from door-knocking to full-blown activism with a booth at the Saturday Farmers Market, sandwiched between the organic peach lady and a guy selling barbecue sauce with questionable FDA standing. She brought flyers, banners, and a pop-up tent that looked like it had been assembled by anxiety itself. Unfortunately, nature had its own opinion. Around 10:42 a.m. a classic marigold dust devil appeared like divine intervention with a bad attitude. It swept through her booth, picked up her stack of petitions, and shredded them into airborne confetti like a ticker-tape parade for lost causes. Her tent collapsed mid-speech, trapping her under a banner that read, "Dignity through order." Local kids laughed. A goat named Larry took a bite out of her backup petition like it was romaine. Priscilla scrambled up, flinging goat saliva off her clipboards and screeching, "This is an attack on democracy!" No one answered, mostly because the guy with the barbecue sauce started handing out free samples and stole her crowd in under 30 seconds. Even the goat lost interest and wandered toward the corn stand. If you're the only one clapping at your speech, it's probably not a revolution. It's a one-woman tantrum with a graphic designer. But Priscilla ain't finished. Now she's about to discover building codes and misuse them like expired coupons at a liquor store. And trust me, the paperwork doesn't stand a chance against a horse named Pancake. Priscilla came back like a storm front with a law degree from Google and a binder so thick it needed its own parking spot. She marched up my dirt driveway, hauling it like it was the Ark of the Covenant, announcing, "This is a cease and desist directive enforced by statutory regulation, which is HOA speak for I found a scary font and no one stopped me." I was sitting on my porch, sipping lemonade, enjoying the kind of peace that only comes before absurdity. She flipped open her binder and began quoting municipal code like she was reading aloud at the Supreme Court. As stated in Chapter 4, Article 17, all residential water installations must observe Sectional B clearance. I interrupted gently. Ma'am, you're quoting plumbing ordinances from She paused, blinked, and then kept reading. Louder, like decibels were legal authority. I nodded politely, biting back a smirk the size of the Montana sky. I'd seen bad legal takes before, but this was like watching someone try to fight a grizzly bear with a karaoke machine. She reached the climax of her binder opera, handed me the so-called cease and desist letter, and declared, "If you don't shut this pool down immediately, I will have you prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law." Enter Pancake, my horse. Now Pancake is many things, noble, curious, and tragically addicted to paperwork. He strolled up behind me like a furry lawyer with a grazing license, sniffed the cease and desist letter, and, with perfect comedic timing, ate it. One bite, gone. Priscilla screamed like he'd devoured her credit score. "That was a legal document!" she shrieked. I patted Pancake's mane and said, "And now it's compost, circle of life." That's when she pulled out her final card, eyes bulging with frustration. "Fine. If you won't listen to reason, I'm calling the sheriff." She was trembling with righteousness, expecting fear. I smiled and sipped my lemonade. I'd been trying to meet him too. That's when her brain hiccuped. You could see the gears jam, because somewhere deep inside her HOA-fueled fantasy, she had missed one tiny detail. Some people think authority is loud. Others just wear the badge and let their horse handle nonsense. She wants to call the sheriff? Oh, honey, he's about to walk out the front door. Priscilla showed up like she was filming the series finale of Law & Order Backyard Unit. She'd assembled a full audience, neighbors, HOA board members, and a few confused folks who just followed the smell of drama and sunscreen. She paced beside her folding table like Judge Judy with a Wi-Fi hotspot, waiting for the sheriff to arrive and shut me down for the crime of peaceful living. Then I stepped out of the house. Full sheriff's uniform, badge polished, hat tilted. The crowd reacted like I'd just announced the sequel to their favorite scandal. Gasps, whispers. One guy dropped his kombucha. Priscilla's face melted like she'd just realized the troublemaker she'd been threatening for 2 weeks was also the person whose name was literally on the county welcome sign. Her jaw fell open like it was trying to file a restraining order against her mouth. "You can't be the sheriff," she croaked, scanning the crowd like someone had punked her. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" A teenager in the back mumbled, "Ma'am, it was on the flyer," which only made things worse. Her grand speech dissolved into a symphony of choking consonants and broken pride. I gave her the gentlest smile law enforcement can legally offer and gestured at the fields behind me. "Ma'am, this is unincorporated land. You don't govern a shrub out here." She stood frozen, holding her now pointless binder like it was a deflated life raft. The crowd? Oh, they were eating this up like state fair kettle corn. Then came the real kicker. One of her own HOA board members piped up. "Wait, your house is on Lot 6C? Another neighbor nodded. "Isn't that part of the Lindell leasehold?" Priscilla blinked. "What leasehold?" The crowd turned. I cleared my throat. "Ma'am, about a third of your subdivision sits on land my family still owns and leases, including your house, so technically you've been issuing violations to your own landlord." Her knees didn't buckle, but her dignity definitely did. She stared at the ground like it owed her an explanation. The crowd's silence turned into awkward throat-clearing, then stifled chuckles. A woman whispered, "This is better than cable." A guy shouted, "Does the sheriff accept HOA back rent in coupons?" Priscilla, for once in her HOA life, said nothing. If you're going to try to evict someone, double-check they don't own the dirt under your granite countertop. But Priscilla's not done gasping yet. Her final move? Call the state. But what happens when karma returns the call and puts her on hold with poetic justice? After public humiliation marinated her ego for a week, Priscilla tried one last Hail Mary. She called the state police like they were customer service for her pride. "This is an emergency," she declared, probably with her neck vein doing cartwheels. "The sheriff is abusing power by building a pool." The poor trooper on the other end replied, "Ma'am, please read a map. That's unincorporated land. You're about 6 jurisdictions past relevant." 2 days later, the HOA board voted to oust her like she'd brought mayonnaise to a chili cook-off. It wasn't close. 7 votes to none, with 1 abstention from a member who couldn't stop laughing. Priscilla didn't even show up to defend herself, just sent an email titled, "Respectfully Stepping Back to Focus on Personal Growth," which is HOA speak for "I'm selling before y'all start egging my mailbox." Mrs. Kim took over as interim president, and her first official act was to call me. "Sheriff Lindell," she said sweetly, "we'd like to host a community barbecue at your pool, the one that caused all this mess. We figured healing should come with burgers." I nearly choked on my coffee. "Well," I said, "as long as nobody tries to inspect my grill for code compliance, I'm in." The party was like a neighborhood cleanse. People brought sides, stories, and apologies. Kids did cannonballs off the diving board like they were exorcising HOA demons. Someone brought a karaoke machine. Someone else brought moonshine disguised as lemonade. Even Deputy Schuyler showed up in flip-flops and left with a promotion written on a napkin. By the time Miss Eunice handed me a peach cobbler the size of a car battery, the entire valley had officially forgiven itself. Around sunset, someone asked the question we were all tiptoeing around. Whatever happened to Priscilla? Word had it her house was already on the market. Listing highlights included newly discovered quiet neighbors and no pool in sight. Apparently she's moving somewhere with more structured governance and fewer horses named Pancake. Meanwhile, Clyde's pool had become the town's new peace treaty. Chlorinated, ironic, and open for potlucks. You can't outlaw common sense. You can't haw your way into someone else's land. And you definitely shouldn't threaten to call the sheriff when the sheriff already owns the patio furniture. Sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't paperwork or pushback, it's community. It's letting everyone laugh at what once tried to divide them. It's realizing peace tastes best with barbecue smoke and splash sounds in the background. Think that was wild? Wait till you hear about the HOA that tried to regulate the sun. Like, comment, and tell us what state your HOA drama started in. We'll bring the lemonade and the sarcasm. After public humiliation marinated her ego for a week, Priscilla tried one last Hail Mary. She called the state police like they were customer service for her pride. "This is an emergency," she declared, probably with her neck vein doing power. "The sheriff is abusing power by building a pool." The poor trooper on the other end replied, "Ma'am, please read a map. That's unincorporated land. You're about 6 jurisdictions past relevant." 2 days later, the HOA board voted to oust her like she'd brought mayonnaise to a chili cook-off. It wasn't close, 7 votes to none, with 1 abstention from a member who couldn't stop laughing. Priscilla didn't even show up to defend herself, just sent an email titled, "Respectfully Stepping Back to Focus on Personal Growth," which is HOA speak for "I'm selling before y'all start egging my mailbox." Mrs. Kim took over as interim president, and her first official act was to call me. "Sheriff Lindell," she said sweetly, "we'd like to host a community barbecue at your pool, the one that caused all this mess. We figured healing should come with burgers." I nearly choked on my coffee. "Well," I said, "as long as nobody tries to inspect my grill for code compliance, I'm in." The party was like a neighborhood cleanse. People brought sides, stories, and apologies. Kids did cannonballs off the diving board like they were exorcising HOA demons. Someone brought a karaoke machine. Someone else brought moonshine disguised as lemonade. Even Deputy Schuyler showed up in flip-flops and left with a promotion written on a napkin. By the time Miss Eunice handed me a peach cobbler the size of a car battery, the entire valley had officially forgiven itself. Around sunset, someone asked the question we were all tiptoeing around. Whatever happened to Priscilla? Word had it, her house was already on the market. Listing highlights included newly discovered quiet neighbors and no pool in sight. Apparently, she's moving somewhere with more structured governance and fewer horses named Pancake. Meanwhile, Clyde's pool had become the town's new peace treaty, chlorinated, ironic, and open for potlucks. You can't outlaw common sense. You can't HOA your way into someone else's land, and you definitely shouldn't threaten to call the sheriff when the sheriff already owns the patio furniture. Sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't paperwork or pushback. It's community. It's letting everyone laugh at what once tried to divide them. It's realizing peace tastes best with barbecue smoke and splash sounds in the background. Think that was wild? Wait till you hear about the HOA that tried to regulate the sun. As the stars blinked awake over dry Marigold Valley, I sat on the edge of that now infamous pool, boots off, feet dangling in the water that caused a civil war of personality disorders. Around me, neighbors who once only waved from driveways were trading recipes. Kids were giggling. Even the cranky guy who hated cilantro was smiling. And for the first time in a long while, I wasn't just the sheriff. I was the host of something bigger than a barbecue. I was sitting in the middle of a reminder: you can't build peace without a little splash. That pool. It wasn't just water, it was the boundary line between stubborn control and earned respect, between a woman who mistook rules for power and a town that remembered what community actually means. Priscilla wanted to drown me in technicalities. Instead, she got a front-row seat to a masterclass in humility, served poolside. We learned that legacy doesn't tremble in the face of noise, it just waits for the noise to run out of breath. We learned you can't Google wisdom, and you definitely can't HOA your way onto someone else's land. But most importantly, we learned that kindness, community, and a little bit of sarcasm go a long way toward deflating oversized egos. If this story made you laugh, nod your head, or remember your own backyard battlefield, we'd love to hear about it. Drop a comment below. What would you have done if someone tried to tow your dreams over a zoning myth? Hit that like button if you think common sense should come with louder speakers. And don't forget to subscribe, because the next story, it involves a goat, a rogue speed bump, and a town hall meeting that ended with a disco ball. Trust me, you don't want to miss it.